The deep evidence. The submersible's exterior lights carved through absolute darkness like knife blades through obsidian. Devon Marquez pressed their palm against the reinforced viewport, watching the abyss swallow the beam whole. 7,000 meters down in the Mariana Trench, light didn't travel far. Sound, though. Sound traveled everywhere down here, and it was screaming. Another distress call rippled through the water, a frequency that made Devon's jaw clench. It was a sperm whale, hundreds of miles away, its call warped and desperate through the trench's natural acoustic channels. The creature was lost. They were all lost now. "Do you hear that?" Devon whispered, though there was no one there to answer. Riley Thompson was topside, supposed to be coordinating with the Coast Guard, but the radio had gone silent 6 hours ago. Devon had to assume the worst, that whoever was dumping industrial waste into these waters had found a way to jam communications. The submersible descended deeper, its hull creaking in protest. Devon's hands moved across the control panel with practiced precision, adjusting the depth gauge, calibrating the underwater cameras. This wasn't just a volunteer shift anymore. This was evidence collection. This was war. 3 weeks ago, Devon had been cataloging deep-sea organisms at one of the abandoned research stations, a converted structure carved into the trench wall, a relic from expeditions that had ended decades before. A routine survey, a simple task. But then the whales came, and with them came something else, a cacophony of distorted biological signals that shouldn't exist in nature. The creatures were panicking. Dolphins were fleeing their migration routes. Anglerfish were surfacing in unprecedented numbers. The natural order of the deep ocean was collapsing, and Devon had felt it in their bones before understanding it intellectually. That was always how it worked for them. Communication with marine life wasn't mystical. It was observation, pattern recognition, and an almost supernatural attunement to the biological signatures that defined the ocean's emotional landscape. Devon had spent 3 weeks diving alone, recording everything: audio, video, water samples. The trail had led them here to a section of the trench that appeared on no official maps, where the seafloor itself seemed to writhe with contamination. Copper, sulfuric acid, heavy metals in concentrations that would kill anything they touched. And something else, something that smelled like machinery and greed. The submersible's robotic arm extended. Devon guided it with joystick precision, retrieving a sealed container of contaminated sediment. Evidence. The first piece of a puzzle that spanned thousands of miles of unreachable ocean. The dumping operation was methodical, sophisticated. They used the trench's natural acoustic channels to broadcast signals that confused and terrified marine life, driving them away from the dumping sites. It was brilliant and monstrous, a way to hide their crime by making the ocean itself seem hostile. A new sound pierced the submersible's hull. Not a whale this time, mechanical, a pump. Voices distorted by water and distance, but unmistakably human. The dumpers were close. Devon's heart hammered. They had maybe minutes before the operations monitoring systems detected the submersible. The darkness outside suddenly felt less like safety and more like a trap. The eerie silence of the deep, that absence of sound Devon usually found comforting, had been replaced by something worse, anguished biological echoes that felt like the ocean itself was dying. The submersible's navigation system showed the emergency exit route Riley had programmed before communications dropped. 12 kilometers back to the research station. Devon could make it, should make it. But the robotic arm was still collecting samples, and above them, somewhere in the murk, a dump truck, a literal truck adapted for underwater operation, was releasing another load of toxins. Devon extended the arm farther, reaching for a section of pipe that was actively leaking. The video feed would be crucial, visual evidence that could withstand legal scrutiny. Photos weren't enough. The defense would claim contamination, natural degradation, digital manipulation, but video footage of an active dumping operation? That was irrefutable. The mechanical sounds grew louder. Another whale call, closer now, more frantic. The creatures knew. They could sense the poison spreading through their world like an infection. Devon felt the weight of that knowledge like pressure, like the entire ocean pressing down on them. The robotic arm collected the pipe section. Devon sealed it in a titanium container and secured it to the submersible's exterior rack. 3 pieces of evidence now, 3 out of dozens they needed. The submersible's proximity alarm shrieked. Devon's eyes widened as a shape resolved in the darkness. Another vessel, smaller than theirs, manned. The operators aboard had spotted the light. No, 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 Devon muttered, already reaching for the ascent controls. The submersible lurched upward, its thrusters whining at maximum capacity. The pressure around them would kill them both eventually, ascending too fast. But staying was worse. The other vessel gave chase, its headlights cutting through the water like accusatory fingers. Devon pushed the submersible harder, navigating by memory and instinct through a trench they'd mapped obsessively over 3 weeks of secret dives. The other pilot didn't have that advantage. They had technology and speed, but Devon had knowledge. A canyon wall loomed. Devon banked hard, felt the submersible's frame protest. The pursuing vessel was faster, but their pilot didn't know about the underwater shelf formations, the tight passages, the places where depth sensors gave false readings. Devon threaded through gaps that were barely wider than the submersible's body, betting everything on the maps they'd memorized. For a long moment, the other vessel matched them maneuver for maneuver. Then it didn't. The pilot had lost the thread. The darkness reclaimed them as Devon pushed higher, faster, desperate for the research station, and desperate to understand whether Riley had managed to get any surface authorities involved before the communication blackout. 3,000 meters, 2,000, 1,000. The pressure eased incrementally with each meter climbed, but the fear didn't ease at all. Devon could feel pursuit, not physical pursuit anymore, but something intangible, the presence of people who would kill to protect their secret. The sense that time was running out. 500 meters. The submersible's exterior lights finally caught the research station's structure, ancient hull plating and reinforced concrete, carved into the trench wall like a scar. Home. Refuge. Their only chance. Devon piloted the submersible into the docking mechanism with shaking hands. The airlock hissed, water drained. The hatch cracked open, and Devon hauled themselves out, dripping and gasping, still gripping the emergency sample case. The station was silent. Devon's footsteps echoed off metal floors as they ran toward the communication array. The radio still showed no signal. The satellite uplink was dark. They were as isolated as ever, but now they had evidence. Not complete evidence. They needed more, much more, but enough to prove the operation existed, enough to prove the danger was real. Through the station's observation window, Devon could see back into the trench. Another distress call rippled through the water, a whale song that sounded almost like grief. Devon understood it perfectly. Understood the creature's desperation, understood its incomprehension at the poison spreading through its world. Riley's voice crackled through the radio, barely audible through static. "Devon, Devon, are you there? The signal is... Can you..." "I'm here," Devon said, pressing the transmit button like it was a lifeline. "Riley, I have evidence. Visual documentation of active dumping operations, 3 sample containers of contaminated material. It's not everything, but it's..." "They know." Riley's voice was rushed, panicked. "They know you're down there. I got a call from someone at the aquarium. Someone threatened me, said if you didn't stop... Devon, I think I've been followed. I'm at the harbor now, and I'm not sure. The connection died. Devon tried again and again, but there was only static. The ocean's anguished echoes seemed to intensify, as if the water itself was broadcasting Riley's fear directly into Devon's consciousness. Devon looked down at the sample containers. 3 pieces of irrefutable evidence. 3 pieces of a much larger crime that was destroying the entire Pacific ecosystem, piece by piece, through terror and poison. The submersible was refueled. The samples were secured. The research station's emergency beacon, though unreliable, was still functional. Devon made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff into darkness. They sealed the evidence containers into a reinforced waterproof case, programmed the beacon to transmit the submersible's exact coordinates on a continuous loop, and began documenting everything they knew on the station's hardened servers: names, dates, locations, audio recordings of distressed creatures that proved the operation's effects stretched across the entire basin. Then Devon did what they had to do. They couldn't leave the evidence, and they couldn't trust that help would arrive in time, so they didn't try to escape. Instead, they prepared to descend again to the place where the illegal operation's main facility would be, to collect the final pieces of evidence needed to build an unbreakable legal case. The whale calls followed them back into the darkness, a symphony of suffering and warning. Devon understood every note. They understood what had to be done. Behind them, the research station's beacon pulsed into the void, a desperate light in the absolute black, carrying coordinates and hope toward a surface that felt infinitely far away. And in the deep places of the trench, where pressure and darkness were the only constants, Devon Marquez descended alone toward the heart of the crime, carrying camera equipment and determination, ready to transform observations into evidence, isolation into testimony, and anguished biological echoes into a case that would change the world.